Crypto is about to go on the biggest run it's ever seen. But I think it's only when you really start putting things into perspective that you really understand just how crazy things are about to get. And that's why I often like to show this little piece right here. It shows you the different phases that Bitcoin usually goes through. And again, once Bitcoin rolls on and just goes on a crazy run, usually altcoins come pretty quickly afterwards. And a whole bull cycle is usually about 3 years, whereas a bear cycle, so the bearish part of it, is usually about a year. And once more, as I showed this to you, it'll make sense. Just take a look. All the way back in 2013, we had ourselves a massive peak for Bitcoin. Over the next year or so, you can see prices went down and down and down until we had a massive dip. At that point, right, the bear is basically over. We see some accumulation. We see some faith returning back into the crypto market. And matter of fact, we went from what? Let's see here, $100 and some. I'm looking at the top right there. I'm going to see the lowest point here, 166, all the way towards highest point here being 780-ish. So $160 to roughly, let's say $800 in the span of 77 weeks. So let's call this a year and a half. And after that, right, we went from roughly, let's call this $700 to roughly $20,000 in the next weeks afterwards. Again, roughly 75 weeks. Never closes candle below the 1 weekly 50 moving average during the bull. Again, this is the 50 weekly moving average. And after it hits that top, you can see that prices go down for roughly a year. At least that's been that way last time. And by the way, this is all centered around the Bitcoin halvings for anybody that did not get it. Before the halving, you have the accumulation. After the halving is when the bull officially starts. Anyway, so you have that all-time high. You have a bear market for, let's call it again, about a year until the accumulation starts, which is the first, or I should actually call this the second half of a halving. A little bit less than that. You can see where it stands though. And that's where, again, the price is generally speaking up, but we're still just looking for the bull market to start. Halving comes in and boom. Prices just keep going up and up and up and up without ever falling below the 50 weekly moving average again, until at some point it does. And that's again what we basically consider this to be a bear market again. So at that point, a bear market again lasts roughly about a year, which sort of ended in December. Oh, I should move a little bit to the right, I guess. December of 2022. Afterwards, again, just following what happened in previous cycles, the accumulation phase starts, where it's generally just upwards, but nothing too crazy just quite yet. I'd say this time it was slightly different. And then after the halving, which was last month, is just full-on crazy times over the next 75 weeks. And if we kind of push this forward to see how things went after this analysis all the way back in January, just give it a little bit of time to load. These are the results. So if we take a little bit of a look, you can see that from the time of publication, we have gone from roughly $40,000 to again $74,000. And once more, if you look at the curve that was expected, just relating back to how previous cycles went, we still have so much room to grow. Even $150,000 of Bitcoin doesn't look strange in this chart at all. And that's why people like to do these cyclical performance graphs and overviews, because it gives people more perspective of what is possible and what's about to happen if you're able to zoom out. Most people get zoned in. They think the price of tomorrow or next week is all that it can get to, where they don't think far enough ahead. I seriously think that whenever I post a video about coins being able to do a 50x, or you putting $1,000 in right now and it becoming like 4 million in a few months, that most people think it's either BS, you're not going to be able to do it, or something else, another excuse. And I look back at these charts that I keep showing you in these videos where, okay, I'm going to give it to you. Prices don't go times 10,000 or anything like that, but it gives you some perspective into just understanding the cyclical nature of Bitcoin, and to not give up whenever you see a dip. And that's why on the trading channel, I talk so much about just buying the dip forever, making sure you have orders for the way down lower. Because yes, it can get slightly bad. If you look at the previous bull market, right, there were some bad times. And even in the midst of the run-up, there were some bad times here in the middle as well. So it happens. Sometimes it doesn't look good. But if you just zoom out, you'll understand that throughout between now and let's just say the next 60 weeks or so, a little bit more than a year, there's a very high probability that it's going to be very, very limited downside, mostly just upside, mostly just craziness, starting first with Bitcoin. And the funniest part is, you might think, oh, so 60 weeks is all I have left. No, because usually after Bitcoin tops out, it takes another 4 or so weeks for altcoins to pop out. So after Bitcoin is usually when things get the craziest in terms of money making potential. And that's why so often I make these videos of prepare now, set yourself up, do this, do that, think about this, think about that. Because even though you've got time, the earlier you start into a cycle like this, the easier. Again, if I look back at some of my tweets I made here in December of 2022 saying, hey, I'm buying right here, this is the turnaround point, you might tell me, Dusty, you've said this is the turnaround point 3 times. You know, you've said it back in September, in November, and maybe a little bit later, let's say February here. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be at the perfect bottom at the bottom anywhere in this region. Even if you bought in June of 2022, or you bought in March of 2023, that whole 8-month-ish, whatever, 9-month period, 10-month period, I don't know, you would have been fine to get into it, right? Those all would have been very, very extremely good times if we look back at it now. If you had bought here, right, let's call this June 20th, if you had bought right there and you look back at your portfolio in November of 2022, you think, I've been in this crypto space for half a year and it's down only. A lot of people sold this week. A lot of people sold this week. And if they look back right now, they think, it was just a tiny bit lower before it was only up. If I just kept my position right now, you would have more than tripled your money in this little time span. And so why I'm making this video? To give people perspective that things are about to go super cycle mode. So hard that I just want to warn people for their mental health and the understanding that it happens for crypto in a similar fashion every single time. I don't think this time is going to be different. The only thing different is that right now there are so many more institutions that are going to play around and manipulate the space harder, I think. Also just based on news and things of that sort. However, I don't think most of the institutions are eager to sell in one cycle. I think most of these money managers, they're placing their money for a minimum of 3 years, or at least that's the idea, not to trade within 1 year. And so I expect them to sit out one bearish cycle and go really hard on the selling pressure next cycle. However, I may be wrong, but the main reason I suspect that also is because perhaps the rules on selling and just some crypto rules for these institutions are still kind of vague. And I think from that perspective, they might want to wait until they do more with their positions until further into the future. Maybe that's a stupid thought, but it's in the back of my head that these institutions are not going to sell heavy this cycle, but perhaps we're going to see a difference as the fees of these ETFs also increase when the grace period is over in, I think, like a month or so. But once more, guys, if you're still looking for a crypto exchange, the one I personally use is Bybit, and I've left the link for it down below because you can claim upwards of $30,000 in deposit bonuses. So you might want to check it out. And also you get a nice little discount on your fees. But besides that, if you can't use it or it's not available in your area, there's also a link down below to DeepCoin, another exchange I use a lot that allows more countries. So you just want to get yourself NordVPN or something like that and check it out with the link down below. And last but not least, understand how massive things can get. I've talked about this on my trading channel. I am ready for the most massive move for Bitcoin. And it could literally be so that the next few weeks, if we look back at how Bitcoin performed, the next few weeks are just going to be all-time high breaking after breaking after breaking after breaking. And that's not when things are crazy. It's only once it's really broken its all-time high multiple times for Bitcoin that altcoins start to get a follow-up. So when I say prepare, I mean prepare for that by orienting. You don't need to deploy all your capital just quite yet. You can wait for a tiny dip here and there, and you have time to go for altcoins. But for Bitcoin, personally, guys, I'm geared up.